Good evening. Good evening. I'm so happy that you joined us for our final evening on the parables. And I'm waiting to hear if we are live, for sure. I think we are. Thank you, Margaret Faye and Lorraine. Sorry you're not coming up this year, Lorraine. Okay. We live in the woods. And although we try to do some good things for the woods around us, try to protect it from fire, we have a dirt road, so we take good care of the dirt road. We hopefully have set up some things for to stop intruders. Don't worry, we don't have rifles attached to the trees. But we really cannot tend the whole woods. But what we can tend is our garden. The grass, well, it's not exactly grass, but it's green, okay? And we have it cut, so on a good day it looks like grass. We plant flowers. We planted many trees here, and we have an arborist. We bring in an arborist every couple of years to make sure the trees around the house are healthy. But one thing we are ever vigilant about is weeds in our garden. Michelle is really our gardener, and I'm hardly the assistant gardener. Okay? But Michelle planted all lilies along the back of our house, and they're beautiful. But throughout all the lilies has grown up this weed known as mugwort. If you have mugwort, you know how annoying it is. It just keeps growing and growing. And this reminds me of our inner garden and the weeds that can grow there. You know, the thoughts, the attitudes that grow among the beauty of who we are. You see, the weeds that grow inside us, they don't just affect our gardens, they influence how we think, how we feel, how we act about the whole field of life. I used to think that if we did the right thing, worked hard, had good intentions, and prayed, in short, we sowed good seed, we wouldn't have to deal with weeds. But let's face it, that's what happens in life. And that is the story of this evening's parable in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 13, the parables of the weed and wheat. I'd like to change that and put wheat and weeds, okay? But in the story, a farmer had his servants plant the whole field, and it started to grow. But then one night, an enemy came in, and that enemy planted a very particular weed called darnel. Just think about your own lives. Has anybody planted some weeds inside you? Maybe from our families. I remember my brother was dating a girl whose ancestry was German. In other words, she wasn't Irish. And he decided to marry this young woman. And my father said, "What? She's not Irish." Now that was a mentality this very good, kind man was planting in us. Marry your own. Stay within your own. We get these weeds planted in all different ways, and they take root in us. Just for a minute, think about, have you ever held a particular belief and then did the very things that contradict that belief because of the weeds. St. Paul said it so beautifully in his letter to the Romans. I do not understand my own actions, for I do not do what I want. Rather, I do what I hate. You know, we hear these things, we know the right way. And yet, oftentimes, those weeds get in the way. Have you ever felt that you are not enough? And maybe you've tried to prove yourself or worked at getting approval from other people. I wonder what weed that is. That weed, I believe, was planted long ago. What about grudges? Grudges. I've often told the story in my family of my mother's aunt, who nobody talked to, but she got invited to every family gathering. And one time I was a little kid, I asked my mother, why doesn't anybody talk to Aunt Maisie? My mother did. Maisie came to all these gatherings, right, which was amazing. And they talked to her a little bit then. And my mother said, I don't know, it happened before I was born. Holding grudges makes mugwort look like an easy weed to control because it is so powerful. The enemy. You see, the weeds that are growing in our inner garden, they really do choke us. And that often moves into our field of life. Let's get back to the story. The servants go to the master, and they say to him, Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Now they knew he did because they planted it, but they were just trying to understand what was happening. And because they knew it, they were so surprised when they discovered these weeds. This wasn't supposed to happen. The servants want to know, who's responsible? So do we, don't we? We always want to know who's responsible. Who's the one? Who's the one we should blame? We want an explanation. Somebody has to be held to account, to blame. I was struck the other day after this horrible collapse of the building in Florida, when they were still pulling people out alive. Some of the relatives, their first thought was to do a class action suit. Now, I'm not judging them because I don't know what my first thought would be, but I do know that it firmed up in me the opinion that we all want somebody to be accountable, and somebody does need to be accountable. And in that situation, the government looks at it. Okay? The farmer says something very different. Very different. The farmer says to the servants, let the wheat and the weeds grow together. Now, why he said this is this weed was called darnel. It looks like wheat. This was a sneaky enemy, by the way. It looks like wheat, but the weed wraps itself around the roots of the wheat. And if you pull up the wheat, try to pull up the weed rather, weed and wheat, pull up the wheat comes up with it. So he says, let them grow till the harvest. And at the harvest, you'll be able to tell the difference. In telling this story, Jesus gives no attention almost to the enemy. All he says is an enemy came at night and sowed the seed of the weed in the field. That's it. He doesn't explain. He doesn't name the enemy. He doesn't give instructions on how to find him, and he doesn't tell us how to punish the enemy. Yikes. How do you live that way? I don't know. This is one of the challenges of the gospel. It always challenges the way we think, see, act, and live. The reality, according to Jesus, is that our lives and our world are a field in which good and evil, life and death, joys and sorrows, that which we want and that which we don't want, stand together in our world. And isn't that true? And Jesus says, this is what the kingdom of heaven is like here. Let them grow together. Now that's good news for us. And there is some good news, even though we want to get even, right? It means that despite the weeds in us and around us, the kingdom is still here. The weeds do not overcome God's kingdom. Now, in reality, this may not be the fullness of the kingdom here. Of course it isn't. But it is nevertheless the kingdom given to us in this life. I'm not sure why I chose this parable. There's about 36 parables. I could have chose one beautiful one like don't leave your lamp under a bushel basket. But this came to me, and I couldn't think of another one. I said, oh no, this must be the parable. I didn't want to do it. Eh? So, is this parable telling us to do nothing about the weeds? To just sit and wait? No. That's not what Jesus is saying. There's plenty to do, and it will be a challenge. What it's telling us is who the judge is, and it's not us. Let me repeat that. Everybody listening? This parable tells us who the judge is, and it's not you, and it's not me. This is a hard one. This is very, very hard. It's telling us not to condemn the people who are different, not to judge the people we think don't follow the laws. You know, I have been heartbroken through the years about the people who have been divorced. I have had people come to me and say, Sister, I was divorced 10 years ago. Not remarried, just divorced. And I haven't received communion in 10 years. I said, why? Because I'm a sinner. But then they said something else. We're all sinners. The person said to me, I don't want people talking about me. Ugh. Who would that be? I don't know. It's telling us not to condemn. Not to condemn. It's also showing us something of what the late Cardinal Bernardine talked about in his document on the seamless garment. If you have never read it, please download it from the computer. It is so powerful. It is so good. Basically, what he's saying is the same thing Jesus is saying. It's all of a piece. It's all of a piece. I want to say something about what's going on right now. And please listen to me very closely. Okay? Right now, it's been in the Times, so maybe you've heard it on the TV. The U.S. bishops are having an argument about whether to condemn politicians who have not tried to pass laws against abortion. One issue. A terrible thing. I am in no way in favor of abortion. The seamless garment. I want to tell you a story about abortion, for those of you who have never heard me talk about it. I know a woman, she's still a young woman, who went to a Catholic high school where they did a lot of right to life marches and fundraisers and support of the unborn. She was not married, and she was pregnant. And her sister was graduating from the same high school. So she was going to her sister's graduation. When she got there, the assistant principal saw her, and she was quite pregnant, right? And the assistant principal called her a slut. This is the same school that was running the Right to Life programs. That young woman chose not to have an abortion, and she was called a slut by one of the very people who led the Right to Life. Now, please don't write to me about this, because I want you to listen further. In the Catholic Church, they talk about Catholic social teaching. And there are the documents, the elements on life. Pope Francis talks about this often. Okay? One of the things addressed is abortion. Another one is the death penalty. Another is the poor and homeless. It was 115 degrees in Portland, Oregon today. And there are homeless people on the street. All of these are life issues. The treatment of children, the abuse of children. All of these are part of that seamless garment of life. We are to support all of the life issues. Whatever the decisions the bishops make, the reality is that all decisions in Catholic faith come down to personal conscience. But how we live our lives, how are we judging when it is God's to judge? I don't know. I do know what I have been called to do, and I have been called to love. The parable tells us, let them grow. Let it all grow. Okay? The term used there, let them grow. Those words in the Greek can also be translated into forgive them. These are the very same words that Jesus spoke on the cross in Luke's gospel. Even on the cross, Jesus was unwilling to pull up the weeds. There is no place in Jesus' gospel for Christian vigilantism, by word or by action, against another or against ourselves. This is what the Pharisees did. This is who Jesus was talking to, by the way. You know, the story's being told. The Pharisees are standing there. They're the people who had the list. They were like the Santas of the Old Testament. They had a list. They were checking it twice. They were going to see who was naughty and who was nice. How many Pharisees are in the church today? I don't know. Maybe I'm one of them. I could be. You know, on a bad weed day, I could be. Pope Francis constantly tells us what Jesus told us. Stop judging, start loving. Oh no, all that mad we have stored up in us is going to have to go to waste. Huh? Forgive the weeds. Love the weeds. Remember, the gospel is always a challenge. But I do know that in my own family, I was having a discussion a number of years ago with one of my brothers, and I asked him, did he believe in God? And he said, I don't know. And his wife turned around and said, oh my God. Usually when he's asked that, he says no. And my brother said, I say no to shut them up. I said I don't know to her because I know that she's not going to shove it down my throat. She's just going to let me be with it until I do know. I was so surprised. Shocked, actually shocked. In other words, he was telling me that I wasn't going to judge him. So, forgive them, including you. Love them, including you. How do we do this? We do this by our prayer and by asking God for the strength to live the gospel. All of us are challenged by the gospel daily. Jesus said, I came to set the world on fire. He didn't come for a nice church picnic. He came to say, it's changing. And I just forgot his name. Very well-known Catholic writer, popped out of my head. Richard Rohr. He said that Jesus turned it all upside down. That's for you and me too. All upside down. Let them grow. Forgive them. Maybe that's how the wheat begins to detangle its roots from the darnel. Because when they grow, the wheat falls over from the weight of the grain, from the goodness. The darnel stays upright because it's empty. Maybe that's what we're going to see in the final judgment. Let's hope that we're enough wheat that we fall over with the fullness. Maybe we're trying. I am sure that you are trying. On most good days, I'm trying. What am I trying? I'm trying to follow the way of Jesus. But sometimes it's hard. Let me tell you something about my town. I live in a poor town. The other day I went up to the Rite Aid. Those of you who know it, it's on Montauk Highway and William Floyd Parkway. And I was sitting in the car before I went in. It was a little hot and I was enjoying a few moments of air conditioning. And I saw this elderly man outside the Rite Aid begging. And I watched a few people come out. Actually, I watched 6 people come out. I wanted to see what was going to happen. 5 of the 6 people gave him at least $1. So I got out of my car and I went in. And I came out, and I had very much money in my wallet. I think I had a $10 bill and 2 singles. And I came out and he said to me, ma'am, I wasn't happy about the ma'am, okay? I wonder if you could help me. I'm on social services, and I didn't get my food stamps. And I'm not going to be able to eat until Monday. So I wonder if you could help me get a meal. So I gave him the $2. If I was a really good person, I would have given him the 10, but I didn't have it. You know, I said, if I come home without $10, then we're stuck, right? So I gave him the $2, and he thanked me very much. And then I sat in the car and I watched a little bit more. And I watched this young man come out, and the young man was talking to him, opened up his wallet and gave him a little money. And then I saw him talking to him, and the elderly man, he was a poor old man. I mean, this was not somebody really used to the streets. He didn't have all that, you know, he hadn't been there long, I think, right? And he got in the young man's car. So I turned around and I watched where they went. They went over to the Boston Market on the corner, and the young guy let him out, and the old man went into the Boston Market. So I waited another minute, started up my car, and I drove over to the Boston Market. I just wanted to see what was happening, because all of the judges and the Pharisees in my life, including me, thought, oh yeah, he's going to walk out as soon as the guy leaves. He didn't. He went up to the counter and he ordered his food. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to sit here another minute. Maybe I'll go in and buy him a dessert. I don't know. He got his plate, and then I saw the young woman who was waiting on him just give him a signal to wait. And she reached over and she gave him something like a dessert plate. Just gave it to him. And he went and sat down. And are you ready for this, all you Catholics? He made the sign of the cross. I was touched by that. This is a town that has a lot of problems, a lot of crime, a lot of gang activity. Boy, there's a lot of wheat growing here among the poor. That's who was giving him the money. It's a beautiful thing. A touch of love, wheat among the weeds. Maybe love and forgiveness are truly what life in the field of God's kingdom is all about. Maybe that's what it is. Let them grow together. God will take care of it. And you and I, we are to go on and live the gospel. Aren't parables rich stories? I hope that these few weeks together have been good for you. This is in the 13th chapter of Matthew's Gospel. Maybe if you get a chance, go back and read the whole story. And look at it a little differently this time, I hope. I know I am. And if you know someone who's not on Facebook and would like to share this with them, well, why don't you suggest they look on YouTube? The sisters have put it up on the sisters' YouTube channel. And it says, Sisters of St. Dominic, Amityville, Sister Pat Duffy, or just Pat Duffy. And some people have just put in YouTube, Sister Pat Duffy, and poof, I came up. So I'm really behaving myself on this, because I don't know where it's going. Hey? But I hope it goes far and wide. I hope that tonight you recognize that within you is an awful lot of good wheat. And don't worry about the weeds. Do the best you can. If you have mugwort growing and you're like, pull it up, you can grab it. But you know the stuff that's all entwined? God understands. God understands. On July 8th, I will begin the porch chats at Mary Immaculate Church in Bellport. Please come. Bring a chair. Bring a cool drink. Bring a baby. Bring a dog. Whatever. So everybody's welcome. That's how I feel. If you haven't been vaccinated, please wear a mask. And if you're more comfortable, wear a mask. But we're going to try to spread it out a little bit more so people have a little more space. But it's time to go out. It's time to breathe the air, the beauty, and enjoy God's field of life. We meet at 7:30 by the church, by the little old church. It's so beautiful. If it's raining, we will be in the auditorium. Big auditorium, plenty of places to sit. Big high ceilings. They've been having mass there for quite some time now. And I love the porch chats. It's a very special time for me. So please come and join me. And if you can't join me, I'm very sorry. It won't be live streamed because our production crew can't handle that. Okay? It's a very small production crew. It's me sitting here, Michelle sitting over in the recliner. She's texting Betty, who's letting me know if we really are live, and that's it. Oh, and our dog Lindsay, she's walking circles in the backyard the whole time I'm talking. This is a home production, and I am very glad to have welcomed you in my home during this time. And people want to know what's behind me. What's behind me is our garden. Not real. We put it up for Easter with a wonderful statue called the Dancer. It's a great image of resurrection. And this is my dining room table I'm sitting at, and behind me is the sideboard. Okay? So we have done an at-home production. I hope you have enjoyed it. Maybe again in the fall we'll do something else. But in the meantime, please know that you are loved. I wish you nothing but blessing. And I encourage you to embrace all the elements of life and to love those people who have fallen. Love those people. Love them into life. That's what God is asking of us. And let's begin with ourselves. Enjoy the rest of the summer, and hopefully we'll cool off a little bit. Have a wonderful 4th of July weekend. And I say good night.